salt air, and the rust on your door. Guys, I read 12 books in July, and I'm gonna need you guys to remind me to never, ever do that again, because do you ever get like a muscle ache, but in your brain? Because I think that's what I'm going through currently. It's not feeling great. My brain's, after like book 6 or something, just turned liquid and seeped out from my nose. I'm a bit numb, so you're gonna have to bear with me here. But you know, when you read 12 books, there's bound to be some bangers in there. I read 3 books this month that I would consider favorites. 2 of them scratched a very specific itch in my brain that I had needed scratched for months, and I found them within the span of like a week, which may have contributed to the turning liquid of the brain. But for those 2, it was worth it. Let's just get into it. The first book I read this month was from the library. I can't remember anything, so this is how we cope. It was Small Things Like These by Claire Keegan. This is a very short novella that I've seen a lot of people talking about. I was bored. Let's just put it like that. This book is about something that happened in Ireland to girls that was very tragic, but I can't really explain to you what it was because the book isn't actually about it. I learned more about it from the note on the text than I did from the book itself, because the book itself is about a man. Like, the point is that he has absolutely nothing to do with it and kind of turns a blind eye to it. And I know that it's supposed to be like quiet and understated, but for me, it was just a bit too quiet and understated. I was bored. It almost put me to sleep, to be honest, but at least it was short. Then I finished Swimming in the Dark by Tomas Jodorowsky. This was fine. I think this is genuinely the most mediocre book I've ever read, but like not in a bad way, don't get me wrong. I had notes on this book. All the negative ones were evened out by positive ones. Like, for example, the writing, it doesn't feel entirely authentic. It feels like he's kind of copying what other people are doing, but it's not bad. You know, it is pleasant to read. The setting of this was very interesting. It was set in, oh shit, when was it set? Oh yeah, it's the 1980s in Poland. There's a divide, obviously, politically, so that was very interesting to read about. The main character is more of a capitalist. The other character, his boyfriend, who he is in love with, is more of a like regular Polish communist. I thought the nuance between those things, the way that they talked about it, was very interesting, but there were also things about their relationship that were not that interesting to me. Like the way he writes about his lover, he was just describing his body a lot, about like how sexy he was, and I didn't care. That didn't really work for me, I guess. But overall, like, this book to me was very mid, but not in a bad way. The next book I read was also from the library. It was Marigold and Rose by Louise Gluck. This is a very short book. It's literally, I think, 50 pages, and it's about twin infants. No, never mind. That's literally it. It's about twin infants. They're the narrators, and they mostly speak about each other. But the thing is, you know, they're babies. I feel like this could have been more interesting than to me it was. I think this book was both too smart. Like, these babies were having a lot of like wisdom and intelligence that babies are not supposed to possess, which could have been cool, but at the same time, there was not enough going on for that to be interesting to me. I don't know if that makes sense. It was both too smart and too silly to really hit home for me. So yeah, that one was also kind of mid. Sorry, we're not starting off on the lightest note, but anyway. Now we're getting to a great note. Sadly, this is also a library book. I've decided every book that I love from the library, I am allowed to buy for myself at the end of the year, like as a Christmas gift. Because the next book I read was Pure Color by Sheila Heti, which is the weirdest thing I've ever read. I think it's very interesting. Going into it, I thought that that book would be about the earth as a green blob with nothing on it. I wasn't expecting a narrator. I wasn't expecting people to be in it at all. But it is about people. It's about one woman. Wait, never mind. I don't want to say too much about it because I think it was better to go into it that way. But what I will say, because I feel annoyed when I find out that books are gay when nobody has told me about it beforehand, even though everybody talks about them. It's like, why didn't you tell me that this book was gay? This book was gay. I just feel like people should know that. I very much enjoyed it. It was quite philosophical. It was very weird. There's stuff in there going on of which you just have no fucking clue what's happening, and it's fantastic. One thing I was kind of about, but then okay, wait. So the writing is good. I like Sheila Hurley's writing. I had read her book How Should a Person Be before. I had to read it for uni last year. I thought it was fine to great. I actually thought it was fine when I'd finished it, but I find myself thinking about that book so much now still that I have to conclude that I probably thought it was great. So I like her writing. The thing about this book though is that it feels like a first draft. There's a lot of repetition in there. There's a lot of like aimless, uncertain writing kind of, so that it feels like a first draft. But the thing is, the book is about the world, this world, as the first draft of the world. My theory is, I haven't looked this up, but maybe I should, but my theory is that this published version of this book is the first draft of it. If that is true, then I actually find that so cool and so meta that I have to pay my respects to it. I aspire to be that confident in my writing, to be able to do something like that. If it's not actually a first draft, honestly, hats off to her for making it seem like one. The next thing I read was, I was on a roll with the library books here. Grief is the Thing with Feathers by Max Porter, which is a very short novella about grief. I was expecting a little bit more from the prose here, because the form is very interesting. It's very short pages with like a lot of capitalization and random noises and even random words. The moments where the crow is speaking. Grief is basically like embodied by this like giant crow, and the crow is one of the narrators of the book, along with the father, who is the husband of the wife who has passed away, and his two sons. And the crow is like helping them with that. It's not really clear. It's a book where it's just vibes, you have to roll with it. I did think that was very interesting, but I also felt like if you haven't experienced grief in that way, it's kind of hard to follow and grasp on to the things that they were feeling. Whereas I feel like if you have gone through that kind of grief, you would understand exactly what was going on with this crow. But well, I'm lucky to say that I haven't known grief like that, so it didn't hit as hard for me as it probably would have if I did know grief like that. But it was cool. It's very short again, so it was definitely worth a read. Then I finally finished The Idiot by Elif Batuman. I read the first half of this in June and I liked that. But as I said in my June wrap up, it was kind of numbing my brain because this character, Ceylin, she has no opinions. And that's kind of, I don't know, it's kind of boring to read about, but the first half I liked. I thought it was cool. I liked the uni setting. I think she went to Harvard, right? Yeah, she goes to Harvard, which is like kind of cool if you think about it. I like that part. However, I only read the second part this month. It felt very aimless, and I guess that was also the point, but I just didn't really enjoy it because Ceylin didn't seem to be enjoying it either. So I was kind of wondering why I had to be reading all of this, because it's like this book is 400 pages long, and like it's just vibes, which is fine, and it's a lot of like random fun facts about linguistics, which I did really enjoy. I'm apparently very interested in that kind of thing. The second half just felt kind of unnecessary to me. It didn't entertain me very much. The ending itself was literally 5 lines, a paragraph of 5 lines, and that was the end to these 400 pages, which made me think about how I never know how to end anything, which is why I have never finished anything. But apparently it's not that hard. Maybe I should stop overthinking that. That's a lesson learned from this book, I guess. But yeah, in my opinion, that whole second half was just not really necessary. Then I read one of the books that scratched the itch for me, and the itch that I was having was I wanted to read something vile. I wanted to read something about a fucked up person doing fucked up things unapologetically. And I found that in Boy Parts by Eliza Clark. This book is fantastic. All plot, no vibes, which is so unlike me to enjoy, but I devoured this book. Read it in 3 days and did literally nothing else. I was obsessed start to finish. This book is also gay. Very, very bisexual book, I would say. It's full of sex, drugs, and just vile thoughts that this main character has. She is a despicable human being. I think she's probably a psychopath, but she was written that way in a very subtle way. Like, it was never rubbed into your face. It's something you have to figure out for yourself. I love that. I love the way that she was written. I loved getting to read what was going on inside of her head. And then also, she has this best friend who is in love with her and who has a secret Tumblr, but like, she knows about the Tumblr and she reads it to like figure out how her best friend is feeling about her, and then to read about how her best friend is so oblivious of her complete lack of care and interest for her well-being. It was so funny to me. I laughed out loud so much, even though, I mean, this character is horrible. She goes through horrible things, like she craves danger. It was all just so interesting to me. It was so much fun to read about someone who is just fucked up. And this author, Eliza Clark, she did not hold back. There were moments where I read things and I was like, I know that she was writing this, like, is this going too far? And then just writing it anyway. And I love that. I love that for her. I very much admire that. I enjoyed the hell out of this book. It was so fucked up, just lovely. Did I say what it's about? Should I say what it's about? It's about a woman who's a photographer who photographs young men and also old men sometimes, just men, and likes to humiliate them a little bit and push them around a little bit, you know, things like that. And sometimes she takes it a little bit too far, and it's completely fucked up, and it's horrible at times, and it's just lovely to read about. I can't wait for Eliza Clark's new book, which is called Penance. I think it's out in the UK and Europe now. I think it's not out in the US yet. I hope it's equally fucked and vile and weird, because I'm here for that. After that huge hit, I read Karasoto is Back, and I was severely disappointed. Ups and downs, you know, after coming off of such a high, I went into the lowest of low. I gave this book 1 star, and I feel guilty about it because I never do that. Unless I like really hate them or something really problematic is going on in them or whatever, but this one, I didn't find anything enjoyable about this book whatsoever. And I love Taylor Jenkins Reid. Evelyn Hugo is right here on my favorite shelf. Malibu Rising is somewhere over here. I think it's this one. Yeah, I like Daisy Jones well enough, so I figured I had to read this one. I knew it was going to be about tennis, but I didn't think it was going to be this much about tennis. It was like Taylor Jenkins Reid spent so much time researching tennis that she forgot to actually write a story around it. So what you're reading is just about an unlikable main character who's just, there's nothing redeemable about her. She is just terrible. She is so petty. She's very ambitious in the sports sense, which is a vibe that I never really understand, but I do like watching things about it, usually like, you know, sports people who enjoy doing something a lot and are very good at it. Normally I enjoy that kind of thing, but in this case it didn't hit for me at all. I didn't find anything likable about her. There was nothing in her backstory that didn't have to do with tennis, so like there was nothing to hold on to aside from all of that tennis, and I didn't care about the tennis because I didn't care about her either. There was just nothing to care about in this book. The tennis matches were so detailed. There's a reason that people watch sports and not read them, because that's very boring, but then also there is a reason that I don't watch sports in the first place, because sports bore the shit out of me, and this bored double the shit out of me. I just could not care about this book for the life of me. Who would ditch Nina Riva, one of my favorite book characters of all time, for Carrie Soto, who is just straight up the worst? They keep calling her the bitch throughout this book, and you're supposed to feel bad for her because of it, but like, she is a bitch. There's a reason they call her that. She's just not a good person. Moving on, because we went from a high to the lowest low to the highest of highs. Another itch that I needed to be scratched. Lately, I've been feeling this like primal urge to be surrounded by nature. I think it has something to do with my top surgery somehow. I can't explain this. I've tried to like put my finger on why that is. Maybe it should be studied by scientists. So I have this primal urge to be in nature, but I live in a country without nature, which is very sad. So what I was looking for was a book that takes place in nature, but most books about people in nature are about men, and I don't want to read about men. So I was looking for a book about a woman or a trans person in nature. I went to the library. I didn't even know what I was looking for, but I saw this book on the shelf. I have beef with this title. I cannot remember it for the life of me. It's called The Word for Woman is Wilderness. And when I saw that, I took it off the shelf. I started reading the first chapter, and already in the library, just standing upright, I could not put it down. I immediately took it home with me and kept reading it while I was still reading Carrie Soto because I just had to go on. This is exactly what I wanted, because it's not so much just about nature. It's about a 19-year-old girl who wants to go to Alaska to prove that she and women in general can live in the wilderness just as well as men can. And the funny thing is that she takes Chris McCandless from Into the Wilds as an example, when notoriously he died doing just that. But anyway, she follows into his footsteps, not really, but she's from the UK, so like she makes a journey out of getting to Alaska. She goes by freighter ships. Snow Dog Sled. Do you remember that movie, Snow Dogs? That was so cool. Anyway, that vibe was going on in here. She goes hitchhiking. So like she has a whole journey towards Alaska first. On that journey, she learns a lot about the world and about the wilderness and about people and about herself mostly. This woman, I had never heard of this book before, by the way, so I had absolutely no idea what I was getting myself into, but this woman is so fucking smart. There are so many fun facts in here about space and about whales and about nature and about the Unabomber, about the Cold War, about science. It's absolutely crazy how much knowledge is in this book and how well it's interwoven with the inner... I got distracted by the wind for a second. What was I saying? Right. All those fun facts are so well interwoven with the inner thoughts of this character. I genuinely, at some points, it felt like she was reading my mind. There were so many things that I agreed on. She's from the UK, so she's also from a country where nature is not really a thing unless it's a place made by people for other people to enjoy as nature, but it's not really nature. She also has like this primal urge to be in utter wilderness. I could very much relate to that, but then the journey that she goes on, things that she learns on the way, the things that she realizes, there's a lot in here about the idea of like mountain men, you know, people who are done with society, moving into the wilderness, like what that actually does to the wilderness and what kind of effect that has on the wilderness and the planet. And there's a lot in here about indigenous cultures that have been fucked over by white people who build society, but also the ones that want to live in the wilderness. There is so much going on in this book. It's only 300 pages. It looks like more, but there's some pictures in here as well. That's fun. 302 pages, but all the pages are like there's a lot of text on them. This is definitely my favorite book of the year. I can already say as much, but there was so much going on every single page. So much knowledge was being flashed into my brain that I could only read small parts of it at a time. I'm waiting until I get my own copy of this so that I can absolutely tear it up with annotations. This book is so very, very dear to me. Have you ever read a book where it was like, you felt so drawn to it, so heard, seen, understood, enthralled, educated, all of those things by it? You just felt like you were in love with it. Because that's how I felt about this book. It was kind of weird. There was pages where I was just crying, not because anything sad was happening, but because I felt so viscerally satisfied by the content that I was reading. Do you guys ever feel like that? I don't know. When I finished it, I cried and I stared off of my balcony. I just had to sit with it. I am so grateful that this book exists and that I found it. This is my girlfriend now. This may have attributed to my brain having flown out of my nose. Maybe I just felt stupid after reading this. I don't want to put it down. I don't want to stop talking about it. I have to move on. I Will Never Forget You. The Word for Woman is Wilderness. Even though the title is a little bit stupid and it could have been worked out a bit better in the book itself, because there is a part on like, there's a lot of it about linguistics. Okay, There's a lot in here about linguistics too, and like where words come from and why we name things the way that we name them and why that matters, if that even matters, and do we give things meaning because we name them, or do things have meaning of their own, or do things actually not have any meaning at all aside from the one that we assign to it, and does it even matter, and would we still feel the same way if we didn't name things with our own brains? So much to think about. This is my favorite book of all time. Just making sure the books on my favorite shelf didn't hear that. Sorry. What helps is that the next book that I read was also great. It was Another Brooklyn by Jacqueline Woodson. I had heard Jack Edwards recommend this to somebody who asked for something that was like A Little Life, which is a book that I'm going to unhaul soon because I hate it. But anyway, he was like, this is like A Little Life, but with girls. That's what he said. But first of all, this book is 175 pages, and they're all like this. Like, there's not a lot of text on them. So to compare a book of 175 very compact pages, a 700-page book that is just full of shit. Sorry, I'm just gonna be honest. That intrigued me. This book is about 4 girls who grow up in Brooklyn. They become best friends over the course of their childhood. I think from like 8 to about 15, 16. We follow them in these very short anecdotes, really, not much more than that. It is so descriptive of what girlhood is like. Even I can still relate to that, in the sense that the way that girls look out for each other and are forced to look out for each other during the years that we grow into bodies that other people want things from, that we are not ready by any means to give them. It was really touching to me how these girls felt like this all-encompassing love for one another, and they were very protective of each other. They all had their own things going on. The main character is actually quite interesting. She has moved to Brooklyn with her brother and her father, and her mother was left behind. And the whole book, she is waiting for her mother to come follow them, even though she should know that her mother will not be coming. So that's her thing that she has going on, but her friends also have their own things going on. It's very sad, but it's written in such a gentle way and such an honest way that it just felt very warm in a way, even though it was very sad. If you didn't like A Little Life, you might like this one, actually. It's also all the girls are of color. This author is black, anyway. She's also married to a woman, so that's a nice little fun fact. I thought this was so well done. I appreciate when an author respects my time, and this one definitely did that, but still managed to tell a very solid story in just 175 pages. Would very much recommend this one, and not this one. Then the next one I read was To the Lighthouse by Virginia Woolf. Virginia Woolf is the most intimidating author to me. Here's the thing. I love the concept of Virginia Woolf. I find her as a person extremely interesting, but her books, for me, are very hard to get through. If you've ever read one of her books, you know what I mean. Like, her sentences are so long. They interrupt themselves so many times. It's like crazy how she can even keep track of that while she's writing them. But anyway, so with this one, I decided to take it slow and just read a couple of pages every day and not put too much pressure on myself. I ended up finishing it in like 10 days, I think, which is not so bad. And I think I'm starting to get it. Definitely took me a while to get into the writing style. I had to read it out loud to myself, or I couldn't focus on it at all. But after a while, when I was about halfway through, I could just read it. Not completely normally, but I could read it in my head, so that's a good thing. I don't really know what to say about it beyond that though, because I feel like everything there is to be said about Virginia Woolf, people already say. I feel like I don't have the authority to speak on Virginia Woolf. This is a book that she wrote about her mother and her mother's death. I don't know what I was picturing from it, but it wasn't really this. This is about a family vacation, but the first half spans over a single evening, and the second half spans over another afternoon, I think, but 10 years later. Even though we spent only one evening with his family and with his mother, the things that happen in between are so touching. So yeah, I do get it now. However, I would have loved to have read a lot more about Cam. Cam and James both, they're the youngest children in his family, and they're very cute in the beginning, and then 10 years later, they're not really the main characters, but like 2 of the characters that come back to the vacation home and then eventually the lighthouse. They were such fun characters, I think. They could have been, but they didn't really get as much attention as I would have liked them to have gotten. I now read 5 Virginia Woolf books. I read Flush, A Room of One's Own, Orlando, Mrs. Dalloway, and To the Lighthouse. Yes, I'm on 5, so I think I'm doing good. So that was book 11. I had 3 days of the month left, and I read Maglue by Tessa Moshfegh. Picked this up from the library because I didn't love My Year of Rest and Relaxation, but everybody else seems to love it so much and seems to love Tessa Moshfegh so much that I was like, I have to give her another chance. I picked this one because it's very short. I didn't like this. I don't know. It was very coarse. There were a lot of slurs in this, of which I was like, just why? It's about a guy who has killed his best friend, but he doesn't seem to remember this. He doesn't even believe that he has done that. And also he's a sailor, so he's jailed on a ship for most of the book. I don't know, I didn't gel with the way it was written. I think maybe Moshfegh just is not for me. I also listened to an interview by Jalen. What's his YouTube? Bar in the Book? Something like that. He interviewed Tessa Moshfegh, and I listened to that in between reading this. I don't know, she seemed like a nice person, but I just feel like her writing is maybe just not for me. I just didn't really like this. I don't know. Maybe there's other work by her that's more enjoyable. Someone tell me if there's any books by Tessa Moshfegh that I might like, based on what you know about my taste. So yeah, that was a rough month. I should never read so many books in 1 month again. I'm literally a little bit brain dead. So for this month, August, I've decided to take the pressure off a little bit and actually let my brain rest, because, you know, I'm going back to uni next month and it's not going to be any better. I need to take a chill pill, basically. So what I'm reading right now is a huge contradiction. It's A Story of a New Name by Elena Ferrante. I figured I could just do this slowly and just enjoy the gay vibes and nothing else, because I cannot for the life of me keep track of all of these characters. Even with the character list in the beginning, like, I have no idea who anyone is. But that doesn't matter. All I'm reading this for is Lenu being gay for Leela, and that is a very consistent thing throughout this book, so I think I'll be fine. Also, I'm buddy reading this with Alex, so that should be fun. Otherwise, for this month, I'm gonna try not to read too much, but I do still have 4 other library books on here that I kind of need to get through, so that was my July wrap up. This is my record of amount of books a month. 12 books in a month. Couldn't recommend it less. How many books did you read this month? I hope it's not an insane number like this. Tell me what was your favorite, or what were your favorites. Take it easy for August. Let's just actually enjoy our summer break. Have a nice, calm, wonderful, easy breezy little August. I'll see you on the other side. Or not. Maybe I don't know. We'll see. Bye!